At the time of this recording, the world is in the midst of a viral pandemic. Many people are afraid. Many people are in isolation, voluntary or otherwise. Some are sick or will become sick. And indeed, some are dying. In this special series of the Guru Viking Podcast, I ask my guests how to work with fear, anxiety, and panic, how to work with isolation, how to work with sickness and death, and how to help others who are also having those experiences. Neither I nor my guests are medical professionals, and this podcast is not medical advice. Fear, sickness, and death are perennial human experiences, and it's my hope that these episodes will be of use not only to those who are being affected now by this situation, but also of use to others beyond it. Culadasa, thank you very much for joining me for this special edition of the Guru Viking Podcast.
It's a pleasure to see you again and to be a part of your podcast. Thank you.
So let's get to it. Many people are worried at this time and experiencing fear, panic. What would you say to someone who came to you and said, Culadasa, I'm afraid, I'm panicking?
The first thing that I would say to them is that's an appropriate reaction. Yes, you've been designed by millions of years of evolution to respond in that way to something that is a perceived threat, and this is a very real threat. So what you want to do is you want to recognize that to feel afraid is normal and not identify with it to the extent that it's going to actually make your situation worse. There's a very interesting psychological phenomenon in situations like this, and that's that the anxiety builds, and it seems that there's a part of the subconscious mind that resists by trying to minimize the danger. No, I put that wrong. To try to minimize the perceived danger by engaging in less careful activities than are really wise. Now, what we can expect in something like this, if somebody came to me and said, I'm really afraid, I said, let's just work rationally through what are the wisest things that you can do. What are the kinds of situations that might arise? How can you be prepared for them? And then the next thing to do is to remind yourself to stick to that protocol and do anything that you can. You will discover there's a tendency, for example, in this, if you're trying to stay in isolation and wait this out, it's going to occur to you that it's really worth taking a chance to do this or to do that, and you have to watch out for that. There's a name for the phenomenon. It's anxiety minimization phenomenon, right? So you experience the anxiety, and there's an unconscious internal process that wants to minimize the anxiety through minimizing the situation behaviorally. So that's the first thing that I would talk to them after I reassured them that it's okay to be afraid. It's good to be afraid. It's healthy to be afraid, but don't let your fear take you over. Don't let your fear weaken your immune system. Don't let your fear make you behave foolishly. Now find what is a productive way that I can spend this time.
If someone finds themselves trapped in fear, they've perhaps done whatever practical preparations seem sensible and are available to them, and they're still afraid. Is there something, some practice or some strategy or some advice you'd have for somebody who found themselves afraid even after they'd prepared themselves as much as they could?
Yes. Don't don't resist the fear, because that's only going to make it worse. Try as much as possible to accept that, yes, this emotion is here, but and you can, with any emotion, emotions manifest in our bodies, and one of the ways that we can gain a certain degree of uh, influence over how those emotions affect us is to enter into as objective a state as possible with regard to our relationship to our emotions. The emotions aren't the problem, it's our relationship to them. And if we allow them to take over, then fear has its own consequences, psychologically and physiologically. And I mentioned both of them just now. It's going to sooner or later make you careless. And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to put you in a state that is going to adversely affect your immune system and make you even more vulnerable. You want to be objective with fear. Like all emotions that manifest in the body, you can achieve an objectivity by examining how the fear makes you feel. And then look at the feelings in your body. How is your body reacting to this? When well, your heart rate will accelerate, your respiration will change. Just observe those things objectively and notice that they're happening, and try to achieve a state of acceptance with those. Okay, my heart's I'm gonna have thoughts about this, and my heart's gonna start racing. And if I start thinking, oh no, my heart's racing, that I'm gonna have a heart attack, or maybe that's an exaggeration, but that's going the wrong direction. It's just like, ah, yeah, I think about these things and my heart races. Well, that's normal, because instead of an invisible virus, what my body is geared to is some predator. And a good thing to do would be to increase the activity of my circulatory system, so I'm ready to run away, or fight, or whatever it is I need to do, right? So you just see, okay, this is normal. And nobody's ever actually died of fright. Uh, so don't worry about it, but notice it, be objective with it, accept it, say, okay, I'm going to have this happen. The same thing with any of the other physical manifestations of fear, uh, many of which are common to everyone, but everyone is unique too. So it's just looking at yourself. What is happening in my body, and in that way you objectify the fear. Um, there's something similar that happens in people that are subject to panic attacks, that they will begin to have anxiety that they're going to have a panic attack, and that anxiety will ensure that they do have a panic attack. So you begin to feel fear, and that fear can be self-accelerating in the same way. So the fear will actually become panicky, a panic situation. And like I say, that's going to have a bad effect on your body, and it's going to make you much more likely to do something that is going to put you at greater risk.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And, people out there at the moment, some people are sick and some people will become sick.
Yes.
What would you say to someone who came to you and said, Culadasa, I've been diagnosed with the sickness, or I am indeed sick?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been through a lot of health crises myself. Fortunately, I have um, almost a lifetime of meditation practice help me through these things. Not everyone has that. Now, to the degree that someone has, uh, you really want to rely on the skills that you have developed um, for just trying to maintain the healthiest possible mental state in dealing with this. Not everyone has that. If you are sick, then let's say you've got a diagnosis of COVID-19, and you'd have to be one of those rare lucky ones where they were able to test for it directly, and unfortunately, it's not very common. But let's say that you at least had a clinical diagnosis that was it was very strongly indicative that you have the COVID-19 infection. Uh, Focus on everything that you can do to keep from spreading it to other people, especially the people that are close to you. They mean the most to you. You don't want to spread it to them. Um, in other words, step outside yourself. Have as much, the more trust and confidence that you have that you will be able to, that your body, not you, your body will be able to overcome this, then the more likely it is that your body will be able to overcome this. There's the body mind connection. I doubt if there's anybody that hasn't heard about that. It's a very real thing. And it is one of the most powerful things that we have at our disposal. And so the more confidence that you have that you can deal with this. Now, of course, the way that confidence begins is with confidence that, okay, my body can overcome this illness, right? But the next thing, the worry and the anxiety and everything is going to be there. So the next thing that you move to is a confidence that I can deal with the symptoms. I can, I can uh, experience whatever this brings upon me. I can experience this, and I can allow it to happen, and I can allow it to work its course. Uh, be reassured. You know, I really am not sure what the best approach is for anyone who is either in seclusion uh, because they're at high risk, the way I am, or that they already have a diagnosis. What sources of information? You want to stay informed. On the other hand, a large part of the information that we've received has turned out to be inaccurate. Um, I'm not sure what your experience in the UK is, but here we believed that, I say we believed that there was this sort of uh, collective mindset of the US was that Italy was virtually like a war zone, and people were dying right and left, and people were being turned away from hospitals and things like that. More recently, more accurate information has come out, and that is not true. They have really struggled. Their facilities have been overloaded. The healthcare professionals involved have been uh, they've been absolutely heroic in the things that they've done, but it wasn't nearly as bad. It wasn't nearly as horrific as people have been told. Um, the death rate. The more information we get, the more it appears that people will get this virus and it'll be asymptomatic, or they'll get it and the symptoms will be so mild that they don't recognize anything, or at most they'll think they have a cold and it's gone away and they have immunity. So even the death statistic, on the one hand, I don't want to encourage people to underestimate the seriousness of this because it is a more deadly virus than the flu. But on the other hand, as we learn more about it, the the mortality figures are actually moving in a positive direction. That it, the, now there are people like myself because of my age, the damage to my lungs from stage 4 lung cancer and the treatment with radiation, and you go on and on, that I'm at very high risk. But even there, that doesn't that because I'm at high risk doesn't mean if I get COVID virus, uh, I'm going to die, right? People should stay informed without allowing themselves to get uh, caught up in, the chicken little, the sky is falling, exaggerated versions of how bad things are. What people really need to do is they need to understand the facts about the virus. Um, where I live, you cannot buy a bottle of hand sanitizer or a bottle of uh, alcohol for sterilization. Uh, well, except for a few people who are hoarding them and selling them at ridiculous prices, But the fact is, ordinary soap and water is actually more effective, or at least as effective. But in truth, it's more effective because if you're using alcohol and things like that, you probably aren't going to you're not going to be as thorough in your coverage of the contact areas. Other things that people need to know about the way the virus is transmitted. If you are of necessity exposed to someone else who may or may not have the virus, and you need to know that during the period when a person is most infectious, they don't have any symptoms. Now, if you wear a mask, that's not going to protect you because it's not primarily transmitted as airborne particles. It's a really sticky virus. It sticks to surfaces. Now, the way that it leaves an infected person's body is when they cough or sneeze, or you're standing too close to them when they speak, and micro droplets of saliva are now those are going to land on your clothes, your skin, and things like that if you're very close to them. All you need to do is maintain a distance, and you don't have to worry about that part at all. But what you have to worry about is this virus, they're not sure how long it lives uh, on surfaces. More information is coming in all of the time. But it seems that it can live anywhere from a few hours to more than a week. So the thing to concentrate on is the virus which sticks to surfaces. Somebody that has the virus, they have it on their hands, they put their hands on the arm of a chair, you come and sit on that chair, and the virus is stuck to the arm of the chair. Now you put your hand on it, some of the virus sticks to your hand, and then you touch your face, your nose, something like that. Now you've carried the virus to a part of your body where it can be transmitted. So know, if you understand how the virus works, how it's transmitted, then there's no point you wearing a mask. But if you can get hold of some masks, anybody that comes to visit you, have them wear a mask, right? And then just make sure surfaces are as clean as you can. And wash your hands and things like that. The more the more a person engages in activities like that, the more conscious they become and the more conscientious they become, the less room there will be for them to be overcome by fear. As I'm sure you know yourself, nothing is more conducive to fear than the feeling of helplessness, of not being able to do something. So inform yourself and do the things that you can do. That's going to help mitigate your fear.
Okay. And there are some people out there who are facing death or are dying. If someone was to come to you and say, Culadasa, I think I'm dying, or actually I am dying, what would you say to them?
I you should be asking that person of somebody who is working in hospice care on a regular basis, because they have a kind of expertise that I don't.
Another way of saying that, what, from a meditation point of view, can be done at that point?
What you want to do, I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record here, is cultivate acceptance. Yes, just you are dying, and if you have a meditative practice, and of course, your emotions are going to make you very distractible, and you're probably not going to be as effective a meditator as you normally would. But your meditation practice will help you. And so, to the degree that you can meditate, to the degree that you can't close your eyes and do whatever sort of practice that you ordinarily do, still try to bring that kind of mindfulness and present moment awareness as you can. Just, you know, uh, your goal is to come to a place of acceptance. Uh, Death is inevitable for all of us, and everyone is going to go through this. If this is your time, then acceptance is your greatest ally. And anything that you can do that will help you come to a place of acceptance of your impending death will make your death easier. It would seem to me, like I say, you should talk to somebody who's an expert in hospice care about this. But it would seem to me, and I did sit beside my mother's bed as she died. The best thing is just to have people that you care about and that care about you nearby. We die alone, but we don't need to be alone until that final moment. And the other thing this kind of comes natural to me after all of these years, and it's hard for me to know just how to communicate it on a quickly to somebody who doesn't have that background. But I see death as it's a part of life. It's just part of the continuous process. And uh, I've approached death a number of times, and I found I approach it with curiosity and interest. Well, I want this is the next stage in the adventure of my life, and I want to be present for it. I want to know what it's like. I want to experience it. I'll only experience it once, and I want to be there for it. I don't want to be lost in some. I don't want to be drugged up. I don't want to be lost in fear and other emotions. I want to be present for it. I I would probably if I were the one providing the counseling, I would be in terms of what I would say and the comfort that I would provide. In the people that I have been close to that have died, I know that one of the things that has been very important to them is to uh, is to acknowledge the things that they've done in their lives that they regret. Um, this is, in my experience, this has always been one of the things that has come up, and to do that, but to do that in as positive a way as you can is important. I would say once again, don't resist any of the things that does come up with that. You are going to miss the people that you love, or at least that's what the way you're going to feel. Uh, who knows what happens after death, and if it really is the end, then there's going to be nobody there to miss anybody. They're going to miss you. Um, if you find yourself uh, as a dying person concerned about the people that you are leaving behind, then do that with love, and try to set aside your own uh, sense of loss. Um, I don't know what else to really say about that, except that death is inevitable. We are all going to die. And whatever that means, uh, embrace it as fully as you can, every aspect of it. Um, the fear, but don't be taken over by the fear. The regret and remorse, but don't don't allow that regret and remorse to be something that contributes further to your suffering. Rather, you know, confess, forgive, send that regret and remorse out to the universe and hope that it somehow makes a difference to whatever you've done. Um, accept everything that comes up, but don't let it take you over.
Thank you. And the last question. Many people are limiting their social contact and they're isolated, whether they're voluntarily self-isolating or they're required to be isolated for some reason or another. What advice do you have to somebody who finds themselves in a period of extended seclusion?
I would advise them to uh, stay in as much contact via things like uh, cell phone, FaceTime. What we're doing right now, this is a Zoom call, or we could do a Skype session, or things like that. You don't need. That's one of the wonderful things about this modern era, is that you can be in seclusion, but you don't have to be alone. And I would encourage people uh, at the beginning of their seclusion to begin contacting people that they would like to uh, be in ongoing contact with. Make sure it's okay with them. Make sure they're available. Find out when they're available, and you don't need to be alone. In the time that you are alone, if you have any kind of spiritual practice at all, that's the time to engage in that spiritual practice. Um, I know some people who have made plans for what they're going to do in their period of seclusion, And mostly it takes the form of trying to take the greatest possible advantage of the seclusion, of the lack of interruption by other people, because they can't go out and take care of all of these errands. It's like, it can be like having a weight lifted off, you know. You don't have to worry about that for the time being. So
Thank you, Culadasa. Do you have any final comments on this topic before we wrap it up?
the only thing that ever gets us through anything like this, and ever has, whether it's war, hurricanes or typhoons, uh, epidemics or anything else, love. You know, uh, and I don't know, I guess it's close to or around 50 years of spiritual practice, everything comes down to love. Just find all of the love that you can and express it, feel it, be it in every possible way. Um, if you have COVID, love the COVID. You may not understand why this had to happen. Why this virus came into existence. You don't have to. Just trust that there is something much, much greater than you. You don't have to believe in a God as such to recognize that there's this huge unfolding taking place that we're all a part of. We look at the history of it, and out of nothing but pure energy came galaxies and suns and planets that life could develop on. And life has developed. The totality of everything is moving in a particular direction. And if you examine what is the most common underlying feature of all of that, it's going to come down to something as simple as love. When the first particles formed after the Big Bang, they fell in love with each other, and electrons and protons joined together, and we had hydrogen atoms, and they were doing the dance of love. And the hydrogen atoms got together with oxygen atoms, and you had water molecules doing the dance of love. And this has led to absolutely everything else. Just find the love and live in the space of love, die in the space of love. That is the one single thing that is the essence of absolutely everything. That's what 50 years of spiritual practice has taught me.
Wonderful. Culadasa, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And it's lovely to talk to you again.
Thank you for listening to this special edition of the Guru Viking Podcast. For more information and more episodes in this series, visit www.guruviking.com.